My name is Arry Yu. I'm the chair of the Cascadia Blockchain Council, and I'm really happy to be here at REIMAGINE 2020. Thanks for having me.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second edition of REIMAGINE 2020. I'm your host today, Adam. Glad to have a special guest today for another exciting discussion with Chairman of the Cascadia Blockchain Council, Arry Yu. For all of you that have missed our first REIMAGINE conference back in May, please visit the website at ri2020.io. We have over 60 plus interviews, fireside chats, and panels talking about blockchain, crypto, market insights and trends. So, please plug in there if you've missed the previous conference. But without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce you to Arry. How you doing today?
Doing great. Great to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you join us out of your busy schedule. You and I have chatted in the past, so I wanted to extend an invite, to get your thoughts and perspectives. And so, again, appreciate you joining us today.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
So let's kick this off. REIMAGINE 2020, we've been bringing in various individuals and entities talking about the space, different perspectives and histories and the way they got into it. So very fortunate to have you join us and kind of let us know how you fell down the rabbit hole, right? So can you give us a little bit of insight on your journey prior to blockchain, and then what led you into blockchain, or how did you hear about it?
Yeah, so between my husband and I'm more the blockchain person, and he's actually more the crypto person. And so,
are those different?
Like how we look at the world and how we prioritize what's going on is very different. And so, like prior to being in the blockchain space, I worked for about 12 years in management consulting, mostly in business intelligence and database and like those sorts of systems. And so I thought about data a lot and privacy and trust systems. And so that's sort of my background, a lot in user experience research and strategy and stuff like that. And then my husband is more the investor. So he's been an investor for about 20 years, mostly in like stock markets and real estate and stuff like that. And 2015 is when he started asking everyone he met, literally, I think it was like a handful of questions. Have you heard about Bitcoin? Yes. Do you own any Bitcoin? No. And like 99% of the people he asked answered, yes, I have heard of Bitcoin. 99% said, no, I don't own any Bitcoin. After about a year of hearing that answer, he's like, all right, this is going to be a thing. And I think at that time, the price was about like $400 or something.
Yeah, you're right.
He started off like buying like half a Bitcoin, and he started watching it, and, off he went, down the rabbit hole. And, we have a very close relationship. So everything he was learning, of course, he was really, really excited, and he started telling me all about it. And he was reading, safety and the Bitcoin standard and all these books, and, following all the greats. And shortly after that, we did a small angel investment in a company here in Seattle. And so with a lot of our angel checks, we are pretty active in doing whatever we can for the startups we serve. And so one of the startups said, hey, we're two young guys, 24. We've never really done anything, and we really want to scale this company. And we also want to do an ICO. And so this was like literally at the end of 2016. And so we started talking. And so by May of 2017, I joined this company as their COO and president to help them do their ICO. And we closed it at the end of December with $32 million ICO. And that was my journey. Like 2017, I had to learn very quickly about blockchain and crypto and the whole space, did the world tour of all the different conferences. And that was my entry in.
Oh my God, you like went straight into it, which is great. We have a lot of viewers right now, right? And a global audience, and our university partners and students. We have young developers and entrepreneurs. So your husband starts to invest. First, by the way, I just sent my dad Bitcoin like right now for the first time, just like 10 minutes ago. We're going to do something in an event down in Southern California, and the organizer that I'm going to partner with was like, are you accepting Bitcoin? So I told my dad, it's Barbie's catering an event for crypto, for crypto heads, Bitcoin heads. So I'm like, we gotta get you logged on. And sometimes it takes time, right? You gotta like wait a few days. So I'm like, let's just do it. But we actually did it on this app, and it took like 10 minutes, and I was testing it out. So I just sent some. So it's kind of a to go in your Bitcoin thing. You know, we're in 2020 now. He's obviously heard it in the last few years because of me. But aside from that, you know, I got some Bitcoin in his hands, and hopefully he's going to go sell barbecue, and you know, that's going to be his experience. So we'll see what happens. But thanks for that journey. You know, I think that's really interesting. So the ICO world, I mean, that's what kicked this whole thing off. Can you share like how that went down? Not the details, but like, you know, what's public or whatnot, but you know, the emotions, the uncertainty, because ICO is a new, and maybe you can explain a little bit of what an ICO is for those that don't know, and you know, that are kind of new. You know, we do have viewers from beginners, novice, you know, experts, you know, in the field right now, but you know, maybe you can give a little the emotional roller coaster that I'm sure you went through.
I mean, it was definitely like a emotional roller coaster. The way I describe the emotional feelings is like you're tightrope walking on a narrow piece of rope or a little wood panel between two high-rise buildings, you know, with below you, completely naked and blindfolded, literally.
Oh my God.
Your head. So that was the emotional feeling over 2017 and 18. An ICO is an initial coin offering. And so for those that are aware of the stock markets and what goes on in the equities markets, it's like an initial public offering, like an IPO, but not really. I mean, there's a lot of gray area. It really hasn't been solidified and clarified to date. And those that were doing ICOs in 2017 were trying to argue the utility case. We already have a product. This is a digital extension of their product and a part of the in-product experience. There's utility. You can use this digital thing inside our application. And so it's not really a security. It's not a promise of a future thing. It's a thing that you can do today. And so it's not a security, but you can buy it and it might go up in value, but we don't care about that because we're a utility token, right?
And I think for those watching, like, you know, what you're trying to get at is with an IP, the reason why a lot of, you know, these projects and kind of this space blew up in the ICO world was to avoid a lot of just the red tape and like the cost it was to IPO. I mean, you got to be a major company, you know, a lot of, you know, already funded and already kind of driving revenue. And now this ICO thing comes about, and you're like at the forefront, really. With, I don't know, there might have been maybe a handful of ICOs prior to probably, you know, when you joined in. But I think the reason why, you know, for those watching, like ICO was just a way of, at that time, you didn't want to be like a stock, which was like a security, which you got to go through a lot of SEC regulations. Yeah, pump the brakes. Let's do this ICO thing, which is a lot quicker. Let's sidestep it and like just say you got to use this token within the ecosystem, and now you're not selling a security where now you're heavily regulated. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but no, this is great.
Totally. And you know, if you're an investor and you came across an ICO, generally you want to go like, no, I shall not proceed because this is crazy stuff. But as a founder, it was like a totally new way to raise funds without having to go through the typical VC route. And in those days, like if you were a blockchain, crypto, anything, to be able to go to a VC, they were all like, no, I don't do any of that dark web evil stuff. Like Bitcoin and blockchain are evil. Like you just had no chance of getting funding even through the traditional methods. And so what's a startup to do, you know? So this new way of fundraising, because it wasn't fundraising, revenue generation, what came about, and hell yeah, right? Yeah.
And so what were some of the examples, or like how did you navigate the ICO structure, or like what were kind of those thoughts of, all right, you know, a few others are doing it, but were there some examples that you were following? Like who did you reference, maybe even on the legal side, to say, hey, do you know how to do this? Because I'm sure lawyers at that point were like, you know, trying to do some extra reading in books and figure out the best way to set up so nobody goes to jail.
Yeah, I mean, for us, there were lots of opportunities to choose from in terms of legal firms, and there's a lot of great law firms out there. You know, we looked at a lot of them. We chose Perkins Coie at that time because they were one of the more conservative ones at that time, just in terms of their approach. And so we needed a really conservative law firm to work with. And they're very conservative through the entire ICO process.
Yeah.
Good and bad with that. And then we didn't really follow any playbook necessarily because there was no playbook. I mean, most of the ICOs prior to like May and June had raised 1, 2, 3, 5 million. You know, as a college kid with a napkin idea of writing a white paper and boom, you know, ta-da.
Did you guys have a product? Now, did you guys already have a product?
Yeah, so this product that we had done had been around since 2014.
Okay.
And so it was a Bitcoin faucet app. Basically, you do some task and you get, you know, Satoshis for doing these tasks. And so we extended that and, you know, created our own token out of that.
And I think that's really important, you know, for these young founders. The market's completely changed, right? And these startups that are watching this interview, where during that time, you were one of the few that probably had a deliverable and a working product, therefore raised some money. And then there were these other projects through the ICO craze where they just had a white paper, and you know, it's kind of sketchy, like you got to be careful. And I've been having these discussions, and we'll probably get into it maybe a little bit later, where it's good to have a product when you are going to, because I think you could still ICO, just not in the US, right? Are you familiar?
I mean, there's actually cases of all sorts, whether you're in the US or outside. And so how you documented it, I mean, there's companies that did ICOs, but they didn't allow any participants from the United States even. And so there's lots of ways to handle or attempt to handle. You know, we're still seeing like what happens with the SEC or whatever government entity.
Yeah.
And really on like what the aftermath is yet.
And so like how quickly did you raise? Like in 90 seconds or?
No, it was over a month. I mean, like good 80% of those funds were in the first week. Yeah. And then there's like a trickle long tail over 3 weeks after that. And then
and what type of investors were kind of coming in? Like, are you talking institutional or just retail?
Buyers? What kind of buyers?
Buyers. Yeah.
You can't call them investors. It was all over. It was mostly retail. We did a good half of it in the pre-sale. And so that was more larger institutional buyers, the big buyers. But the other half was mostly retail.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, that's kind of that was what the good thing about an ICO is that you could have buyers, you know, from $10 to $100. Everybody can get, you know, involved in some way if they like, you know, the project. And it seems like you had a product. So that was good. So that's kind of nuts because shortly after, when you guys raised, like, beginning of 2018, that was the all-time high for Bitcoin at around 20, and then things just kind of trickled off. So, how did you guys, you know, did you convert that into dollar or just kind of keep it in crypto or Ether?
I don't know. I'm no longer with the company, so you know what they did with it. You know.
Yeah.
You have to ask them. Yeah.
Interesting. So now, like, so that's kind of your way, and you like were hands-on, like right off the bat, like ICO, this crypto. So what'd you do after that project, or kind of like 2018? Let's go by the year 2018.
2018, you know, did more of the operations. So I'm typically more of an operator when it comes to startups. So help them scale the company, recruit, grow it, you know, do all the operation stuff. And then I left and I had a baby.
There you go. Congrats.
Focused on the pregnancy and having the baby. We call him the Bitcoin baby, actually. You know, Anthony Pompliano, he'll hold the Anthony, the baby.
Yeah.
And then, you know, helping startups. So I do a little bit of advising, mentoring, and now I'm thinking about going back to doing my next thing, but I don't know what that is quite yet, you know?
What kind of, so you've advised non-blockchain projects as well?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Right. What are there any like comparisons or compare and contrast between some of these other startups, tech startups, and like a specific blockchain, I guess, crypto project?
I'd say a lot of the woes that are typically experienced in a startup are also experienced in a blockchain company, but even more, it's even more, I don't know, like accentuated or amplified in a blockchain or crypto environment because you're dealing with so many different fronts of things that you have to watch out for, in addition to the policies and the legal part of it. So, you already have so much to worry about as a startup, and then you do the crypto and the blockchain thing, you have just a little bit more to worry about and think about. And so it just complicates things. And then the typical founders of a blockchain or crypto startup that I've seen are actually even less experienced than a typical startup founder. And so they just need a lot more, I guess, help and support. But the unfortunate thing is a lot of the VCs or angel groups that would typically give the support to that startup founder are shy of helping those in the blockchain and crypto space. And so it's like a downward spiral, what I see.
Why do you think that is? Because I've heard, we're not investing in blockchain and these types of like the sentiment, it's a little bit changed maybe a little bit now, and things are picking up, and things are maturing as far as teams and projects, and the vision is kind of coming around. But yeah, I mean, why do you think that is from the VC side? Or at one point, they were kind of hesitant to go into, because you don't hear them say like, we're not going into AI or like machine learning, but like as its own bubble was like, we're going to stay away. Do you know why that was?
So actually 2018 through the end of 2019, the Cascadia Blockchain Council, we went on a roadshow to talk to every investor and VC in our Cascadia region. And most of them knew about blockchain, they knew about crypto, they were very interested. But what they were finding was they weren't really able to tell like who's real and who wasn't real, right? Like they would read the person's white paper, look at their pitch, and everything would seemingly look so great. And they'd even ask a couple people about this person and it would still sound great, but then they'd make the investment and, things would not go well. Something was just off. And so a couple of those experiences, and, all the VCs investors are talking to each other. They're like, ooh, I don't think we're just going to avoid the space for a while because it's really hard to tell what's real and what's not real. And so then when you're a legit founder and you're doing your legit hardest damnedest to like do your best, you meet these investors and VCs and they're like, oh, you seem really cool. Like it seems like a really great idea. All the things are check, 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 check. But I'm still really uncomfortable. And so, as the council, we're like, well, let us be a resource to you. Like, let us help you get comfortable. Like, what else can we do? Like, what else do you need? Like, how do we help you feel more comfortable?
Is it, and you think it's from an experience, obviously it's from an experience standpoint too, where like, you can invest for, Silicon Valley and become an, angel where you're at, and VC front and understand fintech or like tech and product. But like blockchain was a little bit different, I'm assuming, as far as this sounds cool, this is great, has it been done before? And then you kind of need to have some understanding of like distributed systems and like cryptography a little bit, or like tokenomics. Like,
no, I would say like most of the VCs and investors that we spoke to, like, and a lot of them, like, they were very, very well educated. I think it came to just who else is using this? Like, okay, X company, UPS is working on this, Boeing is working on this, but what are they doing? Because like, we have to know how they're using it so that we can figure out what we're going to be investing in on the early side. And so because the big guys aren't talking, the little guys are like, well, I don't have any examples to point to, but they're doing stuff. Well, what is the UPS doing?
And which kind of also brings the top, or like the question of, and you said in the beginning, or I questioned you in the beginning of like blockchain and crypto, right? And we'll get into that shortly. Kind of on the enterprise and government front, where it's not really tokens anymore, and even now it's kind of, as you mentioned, the Boeings of the world, the WalMarts, the Nestle's, you name it, right? Everybody's already tapped into it. And so a lot of these investors on your roadshow, like not percentage, but what were their thoughts on like VC investments with big, having a piece in the industry as far as VC investments or Bitcoin or like some other altcoin? Did they separate those three in the sense of, do I want to go to the underlying product? Do I just want a little bit of Bitcoin to be kind of in the game, or a little bit of Ethereum or like some other altcoin, just to have some skin in the game and see how it is. Do you remember how kind of the sentiment was amongst those three buckets?
I say it was a wide variety. I mean, I can't really them. There wasn't any pattern that I would recognize, but there were quite a few like angels and VCs that had dipped their toes into crypto. The ones that I know, like that dipped their toes into crypto, just got slaughtered from 2017-18. They got all excited into ICOs and picked the wrong ones and did not do so well. And some, bought and they're like, it's like $1,000. I don't really care.
Yeah.
So most of them did not have a good experience because they didn't really have the inside track or have anyone to help them navigate the whole crypto space.
And I know you're probably getting back into the scene here. Any kind of how do you see it now that we're halfway through 2020? Kind of the pandemic's picked up a little bit. Bitcoin's on the rise. Enterprises are still working on POCs and pilots. But aside from that, maybe from your investor friends, are they kind of coming back around? Some of the products and projects from 27, your Coinbases, your custody solutions, even these various blockchains, aside from Ethereum and Bitcoin, these other protocols, Hedera's and all that. Are they circling back around, like to kind of maybe get back in, or are we still, at the beginning stages where they're like, nah, I'm going to wait a little bit more until there's some applications or more use cases?
We're still really, really early. I mean, even with the OCC's statement earlier where like banks can hold crypto, that's still, that's a step much forward, but generally we're still too early. Like I talked to a recent investor and he spent a lot of 2016 and 17 and 18 investigating crypto and blockchain, and we kind of kept in touch. And he said, Arry, the friction is just too high. Like I looked at Coinbase and I was like, I'm not going to do that. Like I just can't do that. And then he actually, we have a local startup called CoinMe here. And he's like, I went to do a transaction. I did $20. And then I went to like, move it to a different wallet. But there was like just so much friction. And he's like, the whole KYC, AML thing, like this needs to be completely streamlined. And then like, even the idea, like people have been saying, want to spend Bitcoin, but like, there's so much unclarity. Like, well, if I spend Bitcoin, do I have to pay the capital gains on the Bitcoin? Because like, what does that look like? Like, how do I document it? How does this work? Like, is this supposed to be spent, or am I supposed to just hold it like, a stock? So the usability and the accessibility and just helping the average Jane and Joe understand crypto is just still too complicated.
Too complicated, yeah. So it seems like everybody's kind of taking a back seat here, a little bit. And are you? So now that you kind of get back into the scene, are you looking at any projects right now, or have your eyes on anything? Are you getting back into crypto blockchain, or what do you're not sure?
I don't know. I mean, I am watching several projects. I'm a big fan of Celsius, Alex Mashinsky, and BlackFi.
Oh yeah.
Like how they navigate the waters is really interesting to me. CoinMe just raised their Series A, so
what's CoinMe?
CoinMe is like the crypto ATM, so they call themselves one of the easiest on-ramps, and it really is like the fastest way to get into Bitcoin. But once you're in, it's really hard to navigate because you want to move your Bitcoin to a different wallet. You have to go through all the KYC, AML, and pay a fee and all that sort of stuff. So it's not that easy. Like getting started is really easy.
and obviously to tie this into even like adoption, right? These are the challenges and barriers that we're here in 2020. As you mentioned, the on-ramps are easy, but once you navigate outside of that, or you do want to use it to make a purchase or something, it's pretty cumbersome.
Yeah, or I mean, I guess you could use the Cash App or like Robinhood and you can go in and out and stuff like that, but it's for more of a savvy buyer. It's a little bit more tech savvy, and maybe it might be a millennial type person, but it's still complicated because even my friends in LA, they went into Robinhood and they bought Bitcoin. They're like, well, Arry, what do I do? Like,
yeah.
I'm like, I'm not an investment advisor, so you should talk to your investment advisor. They're like, I did, but they told me they can't talk about Bitcoin. I'm like, well, there's issues here, so.
Yeah. I know my dad's like, what do I do now? I mean, what do I do now? Just a few minutes ago, right? I'm
Yeah.
like, well, just leave it in there because we didn't have to set up. I didn't have. Well, I already have Bitcoin, so I was able to maneuver from one app to the other app, and
Right.
to him, and even for him, which was kind of cool. We didn't have to set up accounts yet. I'm using just a Bitcoin address, which is great. But if you want to go to your bank account, which now he needs to do the verification. Yeah, so I'm like, well, you're gonna have to leave this here for like a little while. This is just to get your feet wet a little bit and kind of do that. So how Bitcoin's been riding. Like, what does your husband think so far? Like, is he just a Bitcoin maximalist? Is he also into the other like Ethereum's or other projects?
Well, he's more of an investor, so he's always looking for buy low, sell high, right? Opportunities.
Yeah.
He would have to speak for himself because I try and do that and I always mess it up. Always mess it
Yeah,
up.
all good. All good. Yeah, no, that's not a problem. I mean, I think a lot of, first time listeners, are trying to understand what Bitcoin is. And we keep hearing digital gold and but we also hear cumbersome, transaction issues where do you hold it? Like, are you really trying to spend it? What was Bitcoin meant for, right? And it takes time for these transactions to occur.
But I do really advise, like, if you're a first time person coming to the blockchain or Bitcoin space, like, do a transaction. Like, yes, it's really hard to set up, I don't know, a Coinbase account, whatever, but go do it. You'll take 10 days to do it, and get it done. And then put in your first $10 purchase. You can buy $10. You don't have to buy the full Bitcoin, and purchase it. And then send it to your friend. And just
Exactly.
how easy it is. Do it at 2 a.m. on a Saturday night, and then all the clicks will be click, click, click. Yeah, a lot of light bulbs will go off, and that's just the beginning.
Exactly.
Go through that process, and then a lot of light bulbs will come off, and it'll be totally worth it.
Awesome. Yeah. And I want to pivot now to, we've been talking a lot about crypto, right? And kind of your journey from which is freaking awesome actually, to go into an ICO as a first project and get that experience. And I mean, that was once in a lifetime. It's kind of coming back a little bit, somewhat, not directly, but just various token offerings and all that. But anyways, so you come into that scene, and we've been talking about Bitcoin and crypto and some of the challenges and barriers to using it and adoption. And I brought this up at the top, where is blockchain, crypto is crypto, blockchain, and they're really separate. And you're part of this Cascadia, Blockchain Council, the state of Washington. So I kind of want to get into this now in the sense of, let's separate the two, right? Bitcoin isn't blockchain, and Bitcoin isn't everything else. Blockchain is Bitcoin, it's the underlying tech, but blockchain is used for many things, and we just touched on it. The enterprises of the world are using it, governments of the world, a lot of startups and entrepreneurs are leveraging the tech as well. So I want to pivot into the blockchain aspect. What are your thoughts on blockchain? And before we get into what you're doing with the state and the working group, is blockchain making a difference? How is it making a difference? And why does it make a difference? What's the point of it?
I mean, in terms of blockchain, there's lots of use cases. Ultimately, I look at it as a version 3 of a database, with a lot more capabilities, and how you use those capabilities. You may use a lot of those capabilities like Bitcoin does, but you may want to use certain portions of it, a private ledger or, a different hybrid approach. But it really is a fancy database. And I know some people hate it when I say that, but I'm like, it's a fancy database. And so when you go to public-private conversations of government versus, technology companies, we like to build things and we like to do cool things, and we want to do it in cool ways, right? Here we are. Government, they want to keep the consumer safe. They want to make sure that, the roads are good. They got the revenue to cover all the public services, and they want to get reelected, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you get the two people in the room? Because when I look at blockchain, one of the best use cases for blockchain is in government. It's all the records keeping, it's identity, it's all these different use cases that are the halo, the mecca of use cases is in government. the technologists, we are not government people, and we can't fake to understand what's going on in that space. And government people, they are not going to fake and understand what's going on in technology. And then the idea behind blockchain and Bitcoin is really the network effect, right? What's the network effect? It's people coming together in community and sharing. Well, we're not going to be able to figure out things by virtually being community and like assuming things. We actually need to get into a room and trade notes and make sure we really understand what's going on. What are those requirements and why do those requirements exist, and ask those dumb questions. And so if you have dumb questions about the technology being asked by government saying like, well, why do you do it that way? Can you do this? Can you do that? We have this problem. And you have technologists asking dumb questions about government like, well, you know,
Why don't you do it this way?
why can't we solve it like this? Or how's the solution? That's how we're going to really move this to that next level. And then we really need to have those standards and guidelines discussed, right? Like if I do it differently in Washington State versus in Utah versus in New York versus in the Ukraine, like this is not going to scale globally.
Yeah.
So we also have to spend a great deal of time as people talking and connecting, and that's where the bulk of the work exists today. And that's what's preventing the adoption.
And so this kind of leads into the group that you're working with, right? And kind of the initiatives and programs. Can you elaborate a little bit more on, I think you and I talked, beginning of the year, end of last year, I think, and you had already been doing this, right? So what has been the focus? The pandemic hit, so I know that messed everything up in general. But prior to that, when things were riding high and you were working with the state, I'm sure you were presenting all of this. What was your role? Like, were you bringing in startups as well? You brought in, your technical kind of experts in the space, and then you brought in your government. What's the role of what you're doing with the council?
So I'm the chair, and I usually consider that to be more the figurehead. So I am the enabler of the companies that I represent on the council. And we have large companies, we have services, large companies like the T-Mobiles, right, and the Primeras. We have smaller companies like the Arc Blocks, and I don't know, I should be able to think of these right off the top of my tip, but I can't right now. And so we come together and we, help educate. We go on the roadshow to Olympia several times to make sure we're having these open dialogues and conversations, and also building relationships, because the human thing of building relationships still exists, and we still have to do it even in the pandemic and in this digital world. And then there's two things that are really top of mind here, especially in Washington State. So one is the DFI. We have an entity called the DFI in Washington, which is unlike a lot of other states. And then looking for those use cases for government. And so the working group is really looking to have that open dialogue with the DFI, giving feedback as different startups and companies using crypto in Washington, how we can make this a safer, easier experience for consumers, and also those that are building the infrastructure of tomorrow. And then looking for ways we can serve government and serve the community. So here we can help create more jobs, create more investment opportunities and innovation for our community in the state. Let us help you, Washington. They're logged down with like records management and all sorts of issues.
So I had the California State Blockchain Working Group on the other day, chatting about some things, right? I know Wyoming's like kicking it off, like pretty advanced. In Washington, I'm assuming they have the working group going. You're part of your team as well. There's a lot of support there. Like they understand the benefits that blockchain provides.
Yes. Yeah.
And how are they? So the next step is you have our support. Now let's figure out how we can integrate and implement it.
It's figuring out like, well, these are all the things that we're responsible. Like we just had our last working session with the Secretary of State, for instance. So the Secretary of State is responsible for a whole host of things for everybody in the state. It's a big, wide scope. And these are all the things we care about. And these are the things that are really, really challenging for us. It's like literally like boiling the ocean. And so as a community, we have to go, okay, there's a lot of opportunities here. I know we're all like screaming inside from excitement, but we really need to focus. Okay, what are we all going to agree on to work on and pitch and come together on? And so it's really an exercise of, okay, there's a lot of opportunities and the Secretary of State is talking to us. Great. Now we need to like pull ourselves together, come together, propose like 1 to 3 things that we think would be the top priorities for the Secretary of State, get their feedback, and then start building out a roadmap on how to make that happen. And that's the hard part, like getting, you get the Microsofts and the T-Mobiles and Primeras, and everyone has their own ideas of like what should be a priority. It's cat herding that's the bulk of the work right now.
And what are some at a high level, like what are some of the ideas on the table? Like what are you looking at where blockchain fits? You mentioned records. I've heard that before, and maybe you can give us a couple other examples. Not only that, like how blockchain would benefit these departments.
Yeah, I mean, like here, I'm like looking at my notes right now, just pulling it up. Like for certain cities, like permitting, working with commercial developers and the city and getting all the permitting and licensing is a big pain in the butt, and it's actually really slow. And so developers are slowed down, and then money is wasted, and then they're getting mad at the city or state, etc. And so how do we streamline that process? There's a lot of different actors, there's a lot of paper going back and forth, and we need to make sure that the right stamps of approvals are happening, and we're not going to blow up some sacred, environmental land or, etc. Right? So that's an example of one that came up that is, high on the list.
Yeah, and I've had this discussion too. It goes along with enterprises and government. You have this spectrum of centralization, and then we have this spectrum of decentralization on public blockchains, Ethereum's, and the rest of them. And then I'm starting to realize that there's this third angle of decentralization, centralization, and then just efficiency. So like the technology allows, as you mentioned, all these parties to communicate, have the data, like understand it. Is there any concern or pushback with, decentralization and like public, like blockchains? Because again, there's private and public chains, and I'm assuming it's irrelevant whether it's centralized or decentralized. I'm assuming it's for an efficiency standpoint.
I don't think, like most of the conversations that I've seen or been a part of haven't really been so concerned about public or private, but like what gets public and what gets kept private, and how do you manage that and maintain that? That's the part that like how do you ensure the right process, and how do you ensure that the person that says I am this entity really does deserve to access and change or modify? No,
sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but you're right. There's probably like two publics too. There's like public to the the Ethereum EVM machine, like global, and then there's just public amongst the consortium, right, of like 10 stakeholders and stuff like that. So it's interesting. So you're saying, aside from that, the technology is what's going to help them operate more efficiently and effectively, save time, drive down costs, potentially increase revenues, right? Is that what they're looking at as well?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yep, just trying to streamline the process and be able to deliver more quickly. I mean, for like a city, like the city of Bellevue, if they can get developers developing quickly, then, more single family homes can be built. So then more people can live in the city and, downsize or upgrade or whatever they need to do.
And how do you sell, blockchain comes from a few internal parties that believe in it, but then there's like you mentioned, the extension of this ecosystem of, not only the developer contractors and then like the city. How do you sell this technology for them to adopt? Because it's one thing for you and I to agree, but the network effect, as you mentioned earlier, is one of the advantages of making this thing work. How do you sell it to the smaller players of like using blockchain or integrating this type of tech when maybe they're not technically advanced or they don't have engineers, developers? How do you sell that? Or maybe that's too far out.
Well, I think it's not selling the technology, but selling the capability. So like I'm connecting to the internet every day via 5G or Wi-Fi. Do I have to sell that to my parents and my family? Like we're going to use T-Mobile hotspot versus, Xfinity or whatever. Like who cares? I'm connecting to the internet and I can talk and have Zoom calls, right? And so I think the same idea would apply to blockchain. Like stop selling blockchain, stop selling it. it's not working for us and it's not working for anybody. Talk about the capabilities. So, hey, you want to be able to develop your property more quickly. You want to be able to get licensed and get the paperwork done, and you don't want to go back and forth so many times, and you want to be sure that the right people are getting the right pieces of paper at the right time. We can help you do that.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? Creating value, and like, aside from, you know, the actual implementation, it's kind of like, this is how it's going to benefit you in multiple ways, right? And you just kind of just touched on some of them. And so who are the partners that you're starting to work with on the, so that you're starting to bring in, you know, kind of push this initiative to the government? So it sounds like you brought in like Microsoft's and like, you know, T-Mobile's maybe of the world, or, you know, what other types of partners, and they're probably members as well, you know, that are working with you guys. What are the various like verticals that you bring in? It seems like you have the Microsofts, you have like some startups, you have some telecom developers. Who's joining to, you know, in the fight?
I mean, it's a wide range of, you know, we have security privacy experts that are working on like browsers and SSID or something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You got like the identity folks, you have, you know, identity standards, director of identity standards for Microsoft is involved. You got like generalists that are like working on general emerging technologies, because I think we want to do blockchain in a vacuum. We want to also be looking at other blockchain relevant technologies. Like AI is really relevant to blockchain, and I think we can help each other, these two emerging technologies. Or if you're looking at, you know, XR, AR, VR, like there's a lot of capabilities that blockchain can help in the AR, VR world. And so it's also making sure that we have a wide lens of all the capabilities that humans are seeking, and then use us as one of the inputs to make it better. So I think that would say that's our approach, and then we're talking to different partners, you know, and different industry verticals, like healthcare is one of them, Premier and Providence. You know, we're looking at startups. We're talking to startups that have been recently acquired or, you know, merged. We're talking to large enterprises. We're talking to service providers that, you know, specialize in anti-money laundering or money transmission laws, and bringing this group of people together, as well as, you know, people that are just enthusiasts. Like, I just really want to be part of the space, and I just want to be able to pitch in, like, yeah, join and, you know, contribute.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think, you know, blockchain in itself isn't so much a business. It's part of the stack. It's a tool that we leverage along with, and, you know, that layer, right? Exactly. And so does this touch into your IoTs and your AIs and your machine learning kind of infrastructure as well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think IoT is still really, really early too. I mean, the idea of IoT is really, really great, but infrastructure wise and like being able to actually pull out the operations is really complicated, especially if you go like at an enterprise level. And so I think, you know, we should all talk and trade notes. And, you know, I think last year at a conference, the director of AI for the Allen Institute here, I got up on the podium and I was like, hey, I think blockchain and AI, we should get married. We should partner. And a lot of the AI guys like laughed me out of the room. They're like, no way, we have nothing in common. I was like, yeah, but you just started your pitch as people think AI is people doing money laundering and dark web stuff. I was like, that's the beginning of my blockchain pitch. People think blockchain is like us in dark hoodies wearing like doing bad dark web, Bitcoin, money laundering stuff. Like, our pitches are exactly the same.
That's so funny. And it's funny you say that, because I just literally had healthcare and AI on the other day. And, you know, we were talking about these things of leveraging blockchain on transferring, you know, we were talking about, you and I right now, about crypto and like a value, but there's also data exchange and like these types of transactions that can be put on chain and you know, secured and transferred privately and all that. So, you know, AI, definitely is an area that's going to be leveraging blockchain. So is IoT, and obviously machine learning is, you know, all over the place as well. So what's next for? I know we got a few minutes here. So what's kind of next on for the Cascadia group here with the state, and, you know, what's kind of on the roadmap? I think you guys are hosting a conference in October. Is that right?
Yep, October 14th, we'll be having a blockchain unconference. And so leading up to the conference, we'll do a lot of the speaking stuff. So we don't all have to sit on a Zoom call for like hours and hours a day. We'll do them in little sprinkles or snacks. And then during the unconference, we'll actually break out into small working sessions, you know, of like 5 to 10 people, and we'll start talking about the topics, and we'll actually crowdsource the topics that'll be discussed during the unconference. So we'll, you know, try and pair up experts with, you know, enthusiasts, and let's just, I don't know, brainstorm.
Is this open to the public?
It is. Definitely check it out. Yeah, and I'll send you a link, or you know, yeah, share it with you.
Yeah, I think your colleague there had sent it over, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. You guys are hosting one, you know, in a couple months here. Yeah, so what's next on the agenda? So you're having this conference, and then where, you know, the last time we chatted, the pandemic was creeping around, and I know, you know, a couple bills didn't get passed or something kind of deep within legislature. Where are we at there, and kind of, you know, what do you see going into this whole, you know, 2021 year?
Yeah, well, we've done really well with the past 2 bills. They all passed unanimously. And then we had a bill this year that we were working on with Senator Sharon Brown. She's one of our champions here in Washington State for all blockchain legislative stuff. And the bill was for us to create a blockchain working group. It did pass the House and the Senate unanimously as well. And then it hit the governor's desk, and as well did COVID. So everything got axed when it hit the governor's desk, just because, you know, it was March and COVID was hitting. And so we were very bummed about it for about a week, but then we looked around and we're like, actually, it's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, it did pass the House and the Senate unanimously. So the people are really, you know, supportive of this. We already have the group together. The Secretary of State, you know, the DFI, they're all willing to have conversations. We've already started building these relationships. Let's not stop. So we decided to just move forward ahead. And then our goal is to, by the end of the year, come up with those recommendations that would have happened through the bill 2 years later. So we're like, well, if the bill would have said 2 years later, we would come up with recommendations, but now without the bill, let's do it by the end of the year. Cause like,
awesome.
All we do is coordinate and talk, and then come up with those recommendations and see if we can fast track Washington and the Cascadia region.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it was just timing and, you know, priorities over certain health risk globally kind of took over. But no, I'm happy that you guys are moving forward. You know, I wanted to highlight this discussion, and I invited you really just to kind of touch on some of these things regarding like blockchain and the state and the government, some of the issues there that we just talked about. I didn't know about your ICO, you know, getting into the game that way. That's totally cool. And so what else? What was I going to say? I forgot. But yeah, so I think, you know, you've gone through this whole journey, and it seems like you guys are you know, you have the support. Do you talk to other states, you know, collaborate, communicate what works for them, and try to, you know, not copycat, but replicate some of those strategies?
Yeah, I mean, I do look to Caitlin Long a lot, because I think she's done some really great work in Wyoming. And so we use a lot of that as just background knowledge. We're doing, you know, conversations with Colorado blockchain and other states blockchain groups. And so, and then we also know some folks that have worked in those working groups. So, you know, they come and join our team, and we invite them to the table. And if anybody else wants to join the table and be a part of the conversation, more than welcome. Just, you know, let me know. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, no. And, you know, for all of our viewers that maybe want to get involved kind of in your region, right, with kind of the groups you're with the Cascadia group, where can they find more information about what you're doing and maybe how to get involved?
Yeah, you can always go to washingtontechnology.org, and under the programs, click on the Cascadia Blockchain Council. But you can also email myself or Nick Ellingson, who's one of our directors of all the programs in our neighborhood. He's nick@washingtontechnology.org. Sorry, that's my kid. And I'm also Arry at washingtontechnology.org. And so we're always open and wanting to hear feedback and have people join.
No, awesome. And so I kind of want to just conclude. We've been on for a little bit here, and appreciate you taking the time out. I personally invited you to kind of get to these discussions. First and foremost, just to kind of recap, you know, I appreciate you giving us the journey how you got into blockchain, some of your experience during the ICO craze, and not only that, kind of separating. My goal was to show our audience and viewers that, and we talked about this, like there's a cryptocurrency side and there's a blockchain side, a distributed ledger side. And they're two different worlds and two different perspectives, but with kind of the same underlying advantages, which is, eliminating that trust factor and working with various parties, whether it's private or public, doesn't really matter. It does provide efficiencies. And so with that being said, Arry, thank you for joining me today. We're going to be doing this every month. So I hope to maybe have you back or somebody on your team. Happy to invite some startups that you're working with or, other people in your ecosystem to shed even more light on what they're doing, how they're supporting you and providing various, technology solutions for the state of Washington as a whole.
We have some awesome companies that I'd love to share and highlight. So yeah, would love to take advantage of that.
Yeah, perfect. Then we'll be inviting you back. So we'll go ahead and stop here. And again, thank you for joining us, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Likewise, you're very welcome. Thanks for the time.
All right, and for all of you watching, tune in to Reimagine, the website, ri2020.io. You can catch full interviews there. You can also visit the YouTube channel, Reimagine 2020 there, and subscribe. But we'll go ahead and sign off there. And Arry, thank you, and hope to see you again.
Thank you.